So I saw an Instagram the other day that reminded me of me, because it read, I don't have ducks, they're not in a row, I have squirrels and they're at a rave. Anybody relate? So who here would like to be a faster, better decision maker? Be more creative, solve problems, understand people, and work with them better? Okay, well, you're in the right place. Because my talk tonight, Real AI, is about how you can think like Steve Jobs, create like Picasso, and change the world. Would anybody like to know how to do those things? Yeah. Okay. It's based on my work as an architect, a psychotherapist, and a shaman. And what I've discovered about what we can do with this. So, has anybody had an aha moment in your life? Have you ever wondered where those come from? I mean, obviously they come from here, but what is here? What's your brain? Your brain and your nervous system are the most complex object in the universe. And your brain and nervous system does a quadrillion calculations a second, which is a 10 with 15 zeros. But what does that mean? What's that as an experience? If you were to take the biggest, fastest supercomputer we have today and give it those quadrillion calculations that your brain does in a second, it would take that supercomputer 40 minutes. That's how much is going on inside of us that we're generally not aware of. But what surfaces from that processing, from that mulling over, from that collection of data and experiences is what we call ahas. And what I do, what I teach my clients to do, is how to have aha moments on demand. Would you like to know what that looks like?
Yes.
Okay, well, let's take thinking like Steve Jobs. Ali calls me on a Sunday morning, a bit of a crisis. She's in this cab going to work. She was hired to run this forecasting unit. It's a spreadsheet that's been 2 years in the development. It's supposed to take data from 36 countries. This is a very big company. And it's supposed to make decisions and spit out answers. Unfortunately, it's spitting out garbage. Even worse, the big guns from New York are flying in on Thursday for a review of the project. She, her team, and the London CEO have been pulling all-nighters for 2 weeks, trying to figure out what's not working. Does any of this sound familiar? Yeah, it's not a particularly fun place to be. So she goes into the conference room, and she goes into this technique I've taught her for going into her unconscious mind. And she finds herself flying through the air over this burnt out, log, destroyed looking rainforest landscape. And then she comes to a section of the forest that's all tangled and choked, and the voice sort of says, you know, come and look at that patch over there and study it. Look at the pattern in the trees. And as she looks at the pattern in the trees, she understands where the linkages in the spreadsheet model aren't working. She goes, I get it. Flies back, comes back into the room, and goes off. She calls me at 3:30. The model's working, we got to clean it up, but we're good to go for Thursday. That little meditation was 12 minutes long. So how many of you would like to crack a big hairy ass problem in 12 minutes? So what's she doing? What am I teaching her? What is genius? We think of genius as being these really, really smart people, but this brain we have does these incredible intuitive things. And one example, actually, we have two very famous intuitive people in our culture, some of the richest men on the planet, Warren Buffett and George Soros, makes a lot of their investment decisions off their gut. Warren Buffett, even as a very, very young man, could look at the financials of a company, and in a second, he knew exactly what this company was really worth, whether it was being overvalued or undervalued, and would know whether to buy or not. Soros, very famously, has a lower back that gives him pain when it's time to get out of the market. So how many of you would like to have that kind of signal in your life? Well, that's what I call passive AI, or passive intuition. It's something that we do have, but we can't really trust it. We can't really rely on it. You know, if you're lucky, you've got it. If you're lucky, it comes at the right time. If you're lucky, you're paying attention to it. And if you're lucky, you go with it. What I'm talking about is active intuition. These techniques for going into your unconscious mind, into other layers of awareness to get answers. And that's what Ali was able to do. So much so that she solved one project, one team issue, one thing after another, to the point where about 2.5 years ago, one of those big guns in New York said, I'm creating a position over here for you because I want you on my team. So that's a bit of what you can do when you're thinking like Steve Jobs, tracking into this intuition. Now, getting back to the genius question. Genius is not a really, really smart person. That's what the word has come to mean. But if you go back to the Greeks and the Romans, genius was the spirit of the work coming through the artist into the world. And if you go back even earlier than that, you go back to shamans. For tens of thousands of years, all over the world, there have been these wise men and women who have learned techniques for going into altered states of consciousness to get answers, to get information, to get power, to get wisdom. And that's what I teach my clients to do. From 2011, I've worked with about 165 men and women, all the way from singer-songwriters, artists at one end of the spectrum, to executives at the top of companies, people head of research teams, laboratories, academia, and everything in between. How to go in, turn their awareness on, and get these answers. An example of creating like Picasso would be, I had an architect friend in California who was stuck on a project. And I said, well, let me see if I can do a reading and get some answers for you. But don't tell me anything about it. I want to go in blind. So I didn't know the program, I didn't know the site, didn't know the budget, didn't know the clients. But I went in and saw some things, made a couple little sketches, I heard some things, I dictated it. I emailed this all off to her. And she emailed me back and said, you know, at first, this didn't make much sense because you talked about a hill and the site is flat. You talked about a view in this direction and there are houses on both sides. But when I looked at the little diagram, I realized that that was the one solution I hadn't seen. And I think the clients are going to like it the best. And then when I went upstairs to the master bedroom, which was the other part of the project, I looked in that direction, and that was the best view, and I hadn't seen it. So, thank your guides. But as I said, people of all sorts of, researchers, lawyers working on cases, people dealing with teams and projects that aren't working, have in a matter of 10, 15, 20 minutes had an insight that broke the back of the problem. So how many of you would like to have that kind of an insight on command? Yeah, okay. So some of you know what I'm talking about because you have experienced this sort of stuff. Some of you think I'm a whack job. That's fine, because this isn't faith, this isn't religion, this isn't belief. It's just a set of methods and techniques that you can test for yourself and see if they work. And remember, leaders and visionaries are people who see differently, see farther, see better. That's why they're out in front. So if you'd like to see how this could help you, your team, your boardroom, or your lab, come talk to me.